Hello, welcome to the morning news. As the Venezuelan parliamentary elections come closer, attacks against Nicolás Maduro's government have renewed. In a letter addressed to the international community, Spanish President Mariano Rajoy and British Prime Minister David Cameron criticized the Venezuelan authorities. The attack comes only 4 days ahead of the poll. As President Maduro explained, the elections will not be won by violence, contrary to what the letter implies.
Thanks to Chavez, we don't have to fight a war with weapons, but we have to fight a different kind of war, the war of politics, and we must win with the only weapon we have, our conscience and votes. We'll win with votes.
The Int'l monitoring mission that has been following preparations a week ahead of Sunday's poll said conditions were guaranteed for a fair result. According to the mission headed by former Dominican President Leonel Fernandez, the violent incidents registered have been isolated. The mission said it had not found any evidence of a coup being organized by the opposition parties, nor had they found evidence of partiality from the National Electoral Council. In Argentina, former President Carlos Menem was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in jail. Menem, who led neoliberal reforms during the late 80s and 90s, was found guilty of corruption after he diverted intelligence funds among his ministers. Furthermore, he was permanently banned from politics. Carlos Menem had already been found guilty in 2013 of running a weapons contraband scheme in which he and his associates sold millions of dollars in weapons to Ecuador and Croatia. And the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo reunited the newfound grandson Mario Bravo with his birth mother after 38 years. The emotional reunion took place during a press conference organized by the Human Rights Organization in Buenos Aires. Bravo was abducted by the military dictatorship while his mother was in jail in 1976. Activists ended in sit-in strike after relatives of the 43 forcibly disappeared students of Ayotzinapa met with Mexico's Attorney General. The meeting was accompanied by the group of OAS-appointed experts who have been investigating the case. The meeting ended with a commitment by the Attorney General to open new lines of investigation after 14 months that have shown little or no progress. 6 Bolivians are diagnosed with HIV every day. Young people are most at risk as the majority do not use condoms. On World AIDS Day, event took place all over the country to educate young people about the risk of unprotected sex. Our correspondent Dimitri O'Donnell reports.
Testing for HIV as part of a free public event organized to highlight the risks of unprotected sex. New figures show there are 6 new cases of HIV diagnosed in Bolivia every 24 hours. Young Bolivians are most at risk because the majority don't use condoms. Youth leaders held public demonstrations showing the correct way to use protection.
They should have this information to know how to use condoms correctly, because the majority don't use them correctly and they think it is something easy to use.
The first case of HIV/AIDS was identified in Bolivia in 1984. Today, almost 15,000 Bolivians have the virus, and while there are more centres to help treat and prevent HIV, doctors admit that there is a delay in getting vital drugs to those who test positive. They also say the high rates of unprotected sex will lead to more new cases. 98% of the HIV positive cases in Bolivia develop the virus because they don't use protection. People aged between 15 and 25 are most at risk, and the emphasis at this event is on giving free practical advice and information to those who need it.
1 of every 3 young people in this country under 24, just 1 in every 3 uses a condom for the first sexual encounter.
Bolivia also has one of the highest rates of underage pregnancies. 246 babies are born every day to women under 20. The risk of contracting HIV for young women is huge.
Today we have more young pregnant teenagers, and in addition to this, We have young pregnant women who become infected with HIV and then pass it on to their children.
Bolivia is trying to reduce the stigma for those with the virus, offering more support for people who feel marginalised. But the message is clear: they can only help those who come forward for testing and treatment. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSUR, La Paz.
World leaders have left the COP21 summit in Paris after they deliver hopeful speeches. Now negotiations have begun, looking towards the final agreement. Our correspondent Luis Arroyo has more.
Heads of state have gone, and now the talks to reach a global climate agreement have officially begun here in Paris. The indigenous people were the first to raise their voice, this time against the program of reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradations, or RED.
We find that a lot of these voluntary RED projects, at the end of the day, many of them end up being private reserves, social bosque projects, and where indigenous peoples and non-indigenous, mestizo people, forest people who are dependent on the local environment, they cannot go into the forest anymore to get the wood for their homes and firewood, and because those trees are now protected in these carbon trading regimes, and they say, well, who?
Leaders from indigenous communities in the Americas say this United Nations mechanism only uses forests and agriculture as sponges for northern industrialized countries' pollution. They have vowed to resist and fight against those powers who pretend to harm their rights, land, and environment.
We are here to bring that message. We are defending something sacred for us. The sky has no price, the oceans have no price, our corn, our trees, they are still sacred. We are here to defend that, and I hope that the world listens to us and understands that the solution should not rely on money.
Indigenous have warned that the Paris Agreement could be a crime against humanity and Mother Earth. Indigenous people will conduct protests this week in Paris in order to raise their voice against capitalism. These actions have been approved by French authorities, who have imposed a strict ban on protest. Luis Arroyo, teleSUR, Paris.
The Puerto Rican governor Alejandro Garcia barely avoided a default on its billion-dollar debt. The governor passed a decree authorizing the use of funds for public services to issue a last-minute payment to creditors and avoid a defaulting. However, the crisis is far from over. On Monday, Garcia addressed the U.S. Senate to urge lawmakers for hope in solving the island's crisis. Financial agencies say Puerto Rico will not be able to make future payments. Ahead of the vote, the British Defense Ministry released footage of jets overflying Syria in reconnaissance missions. This Wednesday, the House of Commons will hold a 10-hour debate to vote on the issue. The opposition Labour Party is divided regarding the airstrikes, and some Labour MPs have announced they will vote in favor. Brazilian Maya Guevara, one of the best female surfers in the world, has returned to surfing. Guevara returned to the Portuguese side, the town of Nazaré, where she had an almost death experience in 2013 when she tried to set the record for the biggest wave ridden by a woman. During her attempt, she broke her leg and was unconscious for more than a minute underwater. The incident led her to abandon surfing for these past few years. More on these on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.